everyone. Welcome back to Amplifying Girls' Voices podcast. So today we will be talking about the 3 A's in sexual and reproductive health rights and information. So the 3 A's stand for accessibility, availability, and affordability. Before we even move forward, please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. So today I'm with
Fiona
and Rudo Linda Mutsingwa.
Oh, and yeah, my name is Kimberly Malima, by the way. So one thing that we have noticed as young people is that there's so many of us who don't have accurate information on issues to do with SRH, right? So today we want to touch on accessibility first. What do you think are some of the barriers young people face in terms of accessing sexual reproductive health rights, services, and information? That's to accurate, comprehensible, and age-appropriate information.
Okay. I think that some of the barriers that we have are institutional barriers, where you have public health acts and public policies that will tell you that if you are below the age of 18, you cannot access SRH services without being in the company of a parent or a legal guardian. Some of these institutional barriers also look like healthcare service providers who have discriminatory conduct, who are also not friendly to young people. So if you have a national policy that does not give you the right to access this information and these services, and you also have healthcare service providers that don't want to give you the help that you need, you have barriers to access to sexual reproductive health and rights information.
Fiona.
Okay, on the note of accessibility, is the information easily there for people? And at what age do we access that information? Because I have actually a situation. I accompanied a friend of mine in town to search for, they're called pearls. I've forgotten the name, but they're pearls. The pearls which you use to actually clean yourself. You won't get any infection. Just in case you have thrush or any other infection that you have, the pearls are supposed to clean you and get rid of the infections. Please, if you're watching, I'm sorry. So we went to that shop, we got the pearls, and I asked, how do you use this? She said you insert them inside the vagina, and according to her, they are actually natural herbs, but I do not think they are safe. And I would really appreciate it if young ladies and women were able to get information on this kind of things, that we should be able to get information anyway. At any age, you're supposed to be able to get your hands on sexual reproductive health information.
And now my worry is, are these people who are selling these pills, healthcare workers, are they really experienced? Do they know what they are selling? Do they know the side effects? So the issue is people have distorted information when it comes to SRH.
Yes, and those things may even cause cancer.
So I think there's a lot that need to be done. There's an information gap that exists within young people.
Yes.
And Rudo talked about these service providers not being friendly. And when we're saying that we want these people to be friendly, we're talking about the gateman who is there. We're talking about the cleaner. We're not talking about the nurse in charge who's going to be in the room asking you what service you want. But we want a conducive environment for young people to access those services. Because imagine if you're coming through that clinic gate and the gateman already says, what are you doing here as a young person? Because already that limits you in terms of the way you're going to express yourself to that nurse. So now you can't really get those services because the environment is not conducive. You've been intimidated.
Yeah. I think that also speaks to the patriarchal culture that we have in societal conditioning that says that it's taboo for you to be even looking for information around certain topics like sexual and reproductive health. It's taboo for you to be even seen trying to access these services. We even have things like speech censorship, and the type of conditioning that we have kind of hinders people, even when they now put on their professional jackets to carry out their mandated duties, to be able to impartially provide a health service to someone who's in need. Because when they see you walking in, when they see Rulo walking in, it to them already, when we get into the spaces, for example, we greet and say, Salbonani Malume, Salbonani Auntie, Salbonani Mama.
Yes.
You know, nothing is wrong with that. It's a sign of respect. But some of these things have unsaid connotations about our conduct and how free we are, therefore, to access information. And this is the third parties who are outside ourselves. Even as individuals, as young people, how many of us are free to willingly walk into a pharmacy and ask certain questions? How many of us feel like they have the freedom to go to a clinic, to go to UPH, to go to Mpilo and ask certain questions and ask for certain services? How many of you are free to go to the window at the clinic and notice that, well, there are not enough female condoms? May I please have female condoms? You can't even do that. However empowered you may
the
think you
judgmental
are,
looks.
because they will judge you. So that affects access, which is the first barrier that we have as far as the 3As are concerned, which is a heartache. That's why HIV infections keep on increasing, as well as STIs.
Okay, so I think in terms of speech censorship also, it goes beyond just accessing SRHR services, because how many of us were able to talk about vaginal health freely?
Girl.
The fact that I can't even say my vagina, I can't even say,
What are you saying?
you know,
In the presence of my aunt, I can't say condom because I'm supposed to not know what a condom is or how it's used or what it is supposed to be used or whatever. I'm not
Children
supposed
of
to know the word
Namibia
condom.
died on Monday. Do you remember that?
yeah. So that's how you say condom. So I feel like we want that environment also, we want that
Safe
free environment,
space.
safe space at home first before we even go out there. Because if it's not at home, it means that you are at a risk of getting wrong information from your friend who's also not sure of what she's talking about just because your mom could not talk to you because she fears. But also, I don't blame our parents. I feel like it's also the way society conditioned them, which also causes problems to us in terms of access. So before we even move forward to the other A, do we have something to share on access, or we should just move forward?
I think we should move forward. We could spend the whole day
Talking about
about access.
So now, which brings us to the next A, which is availability. Are those services available?
Yeah.
Seems like it's an issue because the who's said a lot.
I think there are a lot of market gaps as far as availability is concerned.
Yes.
The products that we are supposed to get as far as sexual and reproductive health is concerned are not even manufactured locally. We have to wait for them to be shipped from wherever. And when they are then dispatched to our local healthcare services and our healthcare centers, they are now rationed out, and other issues like corruption then come into play, where you're supposed to pay extra fee after paying that $10 consultation fee that you have to pay at every public health facility, which leads me to think about the next thing as well. How many people can afford to pay that $10? Can you afford to go and pay $10?
I can't. I was actually not feeling well last week, but I didn't have that $10. I'm looking for it. I hope by the time I find it, I'll still be okay.
Because it's an issue of, we're talking about the services for young people. How many young people are employed? And now if you're not employed, it means that you have to choose between buying bread for lunch and buying a condom. Buying bread for lunch and buying a morning after. So it's an issue of bread and butter, like you had said before. Uguti, we are not prioritizing these things as young people, and it's not like it's our fault, but these things are not available, they're not easily available to us as young people. So we end up not prioritizing them, therefore putting our health at stake.
Those services should be affordable to every young lady in the country. So we should be able to access those things easily. When we're trying to think of, okay, fine, we're not going to get the money. Let me check my priority list. It shouldn't be like that.
If something is not available, you can't even access it. For example, if I want to access this cup here, it has to be there in the first place. But if this cup is not there, then you can't even talk of access. So availability tends to be like at the center or at the top of the chain or at the top of the list when you talk about the 3As. I think this is built on that background where our service providers and our legislators, our policymakers, and when they're even drafting the national budget, they don't prioritize sexual and reproductive health and rights because they want to believe that young people are not engaging in sexual activities. Well, unfortunately, trying to force yourself to make a reality out of something that is untrue is not going to solve the problem. that we have in actual reality. Instead, the problem keeps on increasing. It's quite disheartening to read statistics that over 80% of students in universities in Zimbabwe have HIV, STI spread at this and this institution,
pregnancies.
and all of these things, when we have a national budget that is set every year. But I don't think I've personally ever seen specific funds allocated for young people as far as sexual reproductive health and rights are concerned, and these funds actually being actioned out and given out and doing what they're supposed to be doing, because this is a life and death matter.
I think it also becomes a problem when people try to look at it like this, ukuthi young people are not having sex, because there's issues that you have mentioned about teenage pregnancy, STIs. They are all stemming from sex. So if we're going to turn a blind eye to the fact that young people are having sex, we're going to have so many problems, because it's already affecting the issues of access and availability. And one thing that I've noticed during this discussion is that we have also touched on affordability and availability at the same time, right? And one thing that I want to ask, as young people, do we go for those budget consultations where we want those policymakers to prioritize young people? Are we then, as young people, are we then looking at it like that? Do we go to these spaces? Do we have the liberty to go to these spaces? And if we're going there, are we then listened to be addressed, or are then listened to so that people can respond and we just finish that budget consultation? Do we go there as young people? Because we also have that responsibility to go.
I sometimes think people are not given much information on that. I have been in rural areas and I highly doubt that this information reaches those areas. I was in the rural areas 2 weeks ago, and the only question I was asked is, why don't you have children? When are you getting married? Because at my age, you should be having 2 or more children. So,
But when are you getting married?
not anytime soon. So we need this information to reach every area in Zimbabwe. The people in rural areas should know that there are such initiatives, and how do they then get to attend? How do they get to voice out? Not only us in the urban cities, we're able to attend those things and we're able to voice out what we want.
But I think, Kim, you're making a tall order for us. For me to go to a budget consultation meeting and talk about sexual and reproductive health and rights and service provision and information, I need to have a background of comprehensive sexuality education. I need to know what I'm talking about, because I'm going to go there and then I'm going to say, as young people, we want condoms. We don't have enough condoms, whereas these issues go beyond that. These issues also affect our health, for example, our gynecological health, and all those things. Have you ever been to a gynae?
No.
Have you ever been to a gynae?
No.
We'll probably
Even
go there when
mental
you're
health.
sick, and all these issues, because even mental health plays a part as far as these things are concerned. How many young people are committing suicide because they were dumped? How many young people are committing suicide because they walked into race and found their partner having sex with someone else? How many young people are selling their bodies to make ends meet at universities? How many young people know their sexual and reproductive rights to begin with? What are the rights that you have? I don't think you can go to a budget consultation meeting and say, I think we should allocate this much to this sector under what subsection, if you don't even know what you are talking about, Whereas in our education system, we learn about head, thorax, abdomen. No one in Zimbabwe doesn't know about head, thorax, abdomen. And we negate and neglect this issue as if it doesn't exist, and yet each and every single one of us is a product of reproduction, which is a product of sexual intercourse. It's real, it happens. What must we do about this thing?
Right.
Correct.
Condoms should not even be for sale. I've seen condoms in shelves in shops. This thing should be for free. They just get in and take, so that everyone is able to get their hands on the
That's another
condoms.
conversation.
Because what Rudo is saying is that as young people, we don't have that information, right? And how many schools in Zimbabwe actually teach comprehensive and sexuality education? So if you don't get that information at school, it means that information gap is going to be there for a long time, unless and until we do something, unless until the education sector does something to include such information in
When
our
you go to a
curriculum.
kitchen party.
Yeah, because it seems like we're only going to learn those things when we go to a kitchen party. And how many of us are sure that we're going to get married and have those kitchen parties?
Like me?
So if you're not going to get married, it means that you don't have the access to the information. So
I'm supposed to not know about sex until I'm married? Okay.
yeah. So not getting information means that you can't contribute meaningfully to those discussions. You can't access because you don't have the information. So I feel like the whole issue of access, affordability, and availability affects us all as young people, because one way or the other there's something that you're lacking. One way or the other there's something that you cannot afford. And also as young people, when you get to a pharmacy in month and rulo, you're buying your pads. Do you consider buying condoms and morning after or something like that? Do you
No.
prioritize that?
No.
We do not as young people. But it's not our fault, because there are so many things at play here. There's the issue of us not being employed, issue of us not affording, and issue of us not empowered with the information.
And you're at risk of being misinformed.
Yeah, we're at risk of being misinformed. So I feel like there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of us as young people accessing this information. There are spaces that need to be provided for us to get this information. There are services that are supposed to be made available for us as young people, because the decisions that we make in terms of our sexual health affect not only our sexual health, but our well-being as young people. So any last words before we close this podcast?
I think it also affects our future. It affects the rest of the world. If more of us get infected by HIV, the HIV budget has to go up. That means resources that could have been otherwise used for other things then have to be redirected and diverted back to this. I'm just thinking about victims of sexual abuse. If you're a victim of sexual abuse or sexual assault and you don't have enough information, how do you know when you're violated? What do you do when you've been violated? How do you get help? Do you know about PEP? Do you know about counseling that you can get about all of that? We are creating a system of victims who can't even speak out, which is very sad and which is wrong and quite shameful.
Yes. Now, the topic of PEP, you now need to go to a doctor, get a consultation, and get a prescription, then go to a pharmacy and get the PEP, which is
A long process.
costly also.
While dealing with trauma.
Yes. You don't have that kind of money already, but then you need to do all these things just to get a certain thing that should be available everywhere, and at any certain age you're supposed to get PEP.
Okay, so it seems like we still have a lot to say, but please tell us what you think on our comment section, because we have unpacked so many things that affect young people. So we would love to see your comments on what you think about the discussion that we've had. And do not forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And this is from us.